In this particular lesson with this foundation building routine, I am choosing to use one of the 8 specialized onsets from the 4 pillars of singing. And it just tends to be the one that works best for this program and it's best for beginners. And that onset is called the Quack and Release onset. The Quack and Release onset is characterized by a highly compressed position of quack vocal mode. Now, what is quack vocal mode? Quack vocal mode is one of 8 physical modes in TVS methodology, and it is characterized by a hypercompression of the vocal folds. That is to say, left vocal fold, right vocal fold coming together, compressing a lot. In fact, even more beyond what you would need for singing, okay? Because at this point, quack vocal mode or a quack and release onset, this hypercompression of the vocal folds, even though we don't use this sound in singing, we use it in training as resistance workouts, okay? We're moving the muscles. Now, this is the quack and release onset. All right. Now, it might seem a little strange, a little weird. Remember, we're not singing. We're only working out and moving certain muscles. In order for you to get great coordination of the top 6 or 7 technical details that you need to understand and master and balance in your singing, you need to drill over and over again this quack and release onset. Now, if you look at your information, the training routine for the quack and release onset, you'll see that it is comprised of essentially 6 technical steps. It has its own workflow, the quack and release onset workflow. What do I mean by workflow? Well, a workflow is the sequential steps to any process. Simply step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, that's a workflow, okay? And the best way to accelerate your training and build muscle memory and get this stuff under your belt quickly is to train it through repetition on these training workflows. So, the quack and release onset workflow, looking at your routine outline there, you'll see that it starts with, the first component in that workflow starts with pitch or frequency. So we have to match the note, right? And that might seem a bit obvious. Great, I get an A for the first step. I matched my pitch. Looking at that training routine, you'll see that the second step is respiration. Another obvious point, because the singing voice is a wind instrument, it takes wind to play it. But just because it's obvious, it doesn't mean I'm going to remove it from the workflow. It still needs to be there. So we just work through the obvious steps here. We got pitch and we got respiration. Great. I'm matching my note, I'm blowing some wind. The second step in the quack and release onset is track through a nasal consonant, a nasal M or nasal N. Now, that may sound familiar. You just did that in the resonant tracking routines. So here, you're just going to do it again. So, step 1, match pitch. Step 2, blow wind. Step 3, buzz on a nasal consonant. Okay, being very careful to get nice smirky smirk if it's an M. If it's an N, tip of the tongue behind the back of the back of the top teeth. Okay, lots of buzz, lots of resonant energy at the connect point, lots of tickle and vibration here and here. Right? The fourth step in the quack and release onset workflow is where it starts getting a little bit strange. This is where the onset gets its name. I'm going to ask you to modify to quack vocal mode, a highly compressed vocal fold position. And here's what it looks and sounds like. Okay? A high and tight, quacky me, me, me. Now, I know it's a little bit weird. Don't freak out. We're not singing. You're not going to use this sound in your voice when you're singing, but this is the sound that you get when you use the resistance training of quacking. If you squeeze your vocal folds hard enough and you get that compression, it becomes resistance training, and that's what we're doing here. So you'll put your lips together, you'll do a real thin, surgical, highly compressed me, me, me. All right? Now, for some people, that might be difficult to do. It might be windy when you try to do this. Okay? Don't feel discouraged. Stay with it. Keep working on this workflow. That's the whole point of this workflow, is if you're one of these individuals that has a hard time getting into quack mode, has a hard time getting the vocal folds to compress, in time, this will come together for you if you keep working on it. And it doesn't take forever. For some people, it's just the end of the day, a few days, a couple weeks, and it'll start coming around. Now, the fifth step in our quack and release onset workflow is we will shape the embouchure. Now, the embouchure is basically fancy French for this. Okay? How we shape our jaw, lips, teeth, and tongue when we release the product, when we release the singing voice. Okay? So, watch me go through the workflow again, all the way through to the embouchure. I'm going to drop my jaw, I'm going to bite, I'm going to put my tongue forward, and I'm going to make sure that I'm phonating through, my onset is phonating through the proper training vowel, which in this case is A. Not A, not U, not E, not A, but A, E-H-A. Now there are other good, proper, singer-friendly training vowels that you can learn about in the 4 pillars of singing, but right now, in this particular program, in the foundation building routine and early on, A is the prettiest girl to prom. It's the vowel that you're going to first become very familiar with. So here we go, shaping to my embouchure, releasing into an A vowel. The quack and release onset workflow. All right. One more step. Take a look at your workflow routine there, and you'll see that the last step is that after I've shaped my embouchure and released my vowel, I will dampen my larynx. Now, what does that mean, dampen the larynx? Well, it means to subtly lower the larynx. I'm going to manipulate my larynx just enough. I'm going to lower it just a touch. And when I lower my larynx just a touch, it increases the resonant space in my vocal tract. And like any instrument, when you increase the resonant space, you get amplified lower harmonics. Lower harmonics amplify more. If you increase the resonant space of a violin, you get a viola. So, in a sense, that's what I'm doing to my instrument. It's what you will be doing to your instrument when you dampen the larynx. Now, if you don't dampen the larynx, it doesn't make your onset or your singing wrong or even necessarily bad. It just doesn't make it as good. Great world-class voices, voices that are sonorous and powerful and beautiful and bridge and connect and get fantastic exotic color and beauty, are voices that have larynx manipulation in them. Which eventually leads to tuning the formant. So then, watch me now as I go all the way through the quack and release onset workflow, all the way to the larynx dampening. By the way, I'm going to place the tip of my tongue against the back of the bottom teeth. And when I get to my embouchure, I will push my tongue against the back of my bottom teeth and work to subtly dampen the larynx. Now, we call this tongue leveraging. It doesn't guarantee that your larynx will dampen if you leverage your tongue against the back of your bottom teeth. It only helps or guides the larynx, but it's a trick that you might want to try. Here we go. again. Only okay. Hey. You hear that? Do you hear the difference between my neutral larynx position, hey, and the dampened larynx position, hey? See, it's rounder. It's got darker overtones in it. It has more amplified energy. It's projecting more. It's louder as well. All of these benefits are enhanced and brought on by good larynx dampening. Now, larynx dampening doesn't only give you a beautiful sound color, but it also gives the intrinsic musculature stability. It gives you a stability so that when you go to bridge the passaggio and sing huge in the head voice and do your bridging maneuvers, that you're less likely to break, yodel, and have instability problems. All right, I'll do a couple more quack and release onsets for you. You'll notice that I'm working my way up one note at a time chromatically. The game that I'm playing is I'm going to phonate a high performance human phonation, a beautiful, stable little singularity that has compression, an embouchure, a dampened larynx, a good vowel, all these things. Here we go. Next note. You'll notice that you'll need a cueing device, either a pitch pipe, a pocket tone, an app on your smartphone, or a keyboard to give yourself the cue. A quack and release onset. Next note. Now, for me, I'm already getting into my head voice. Doesn't matter. You keep doing the quack and release onsets into your head voice. Just make sure that quacky compression hits here in the heady position, not here in a constricted chest pulling position. All right. So that is an example of the quack and release onset, the quack and release onset workflow, how to go through that workflow, and this is what I want you to do, precisely what I want you to do in the second section of the foundation building routine. It's going to create amazing muscle memory of these 6 key technical components. It's going to make sure that every time you release, you've got great compression in your vocal folds. It's going to make sure that every time you release, you've got a good embouchure. It's going to make sure that every time you release, you've got a larynx that's tuned and dampened and it's amplifying the formant. Okay? It's going to make sure that you've got a great embouchure. We need to repeat these movements and build the muscle memory so that it's consistent and dead on every single time you release your phonations, be it training or for singing.